What's up everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I want to show you how to make a dialogue system for your game. As you can see in this video, a lot of games, also like Hollow Knight or Celeste, they all have this conversation dialogue system within their game, and I want to show you how to make it easily for your game with these simple steps. So I've set up this little scene. And let's get right into it. So I have here two characters, the main character and the person I want to talk to. Now, what I want to start with, first of all, is add a empty object. And this will be, let's say, the dialogue box. And within here, we can add many other dialogues. And let's call this dialogue 1. And let's get the position. It's right here. It's okay. And we're going to add here a box collider 2D. And let's see how big it is. And this is important to, let's say, this will be the area. And within this area, I can trigger the conversation with this character. Don't forget to push this trigger here. And we're going to make 2 FSMs within this dialogue. So let's start with the first FSM. Within the first FSM, what I want to do is inform the player that he can do something with this character. You can also skip this. You can go right into, let's say, make a trigger to the event and just start the dialogue. But I want to inform the player. For that, I made this little picture here, which I'm going to put on the player layer. And just going to put it a little bit in front. And I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller, like this. And I'm just going to put it here. And what I want it to do is, by default, I want its color to be, let's say, invisible. I can put it like this. And if I go now to dialog 1, in my first state, I just want this dialog to show up. And for that, I'm going to use the set sprite color RGBA. And the set sprite color RGBA is one of those functions you can get in the ecosystem. And I'm just going to specify a game object, which is here. Press to interact. Let's also just add this to dialog 1. And here it's press to interact. You can't see it. And by default, once again, I want it to be press to interact. I want to be invisible by default until you trigger to the event. Adding a trigger to the event, enter, player tag, and then I'm just gonna finish this. Make sure to also put here finished. And let's call this state the don't show, because in this state I won't show any press to interact state. And I'm just going to go here. What I'm going to do is actually easier way is just to copy this state. I don't want to make it a new state. And here I want to say show. No, it's the wrong one. Here I want to say show interact button. And what I'm going to change here is the alpha. I'm going to put it to 0. And then I want to have here a trigger exit. On exit, I want to go back to state 1, which just happens when I walk into this box. This press to interact will appear, and when I walk out of the box, it will disappear. So this will give you the sense of you can only interact with this character when you are in this area. And now what I want to do is add an additional, or I'm just gonna add an additional transition here, and which is the get key down. As I'm saying on my picture, press to interact. Let's actually just make it visible right now. There it is. Press E to interact, right? So let's go back to the dialog. And I want a key which is the E. And I want to send a new event, and let's call it interact. And click add transition, which is the interact. Whoops, and I'm going to add a new state here. Let me just zoom this a little bit. Hope you can all see it. Whoops, now I'm making a big mess. Let me just scroll this up here so you can actually read this. And interact, once I press, so within this state there is a trigger exit, but while I'm in this box I can also press E and then I will fly to this state. And in this state I'm going to do send event. And I want to have send event in game object FSM, and I'm just going to use the owner. And this FSM, let's call this the trigger. And I'm just going to add one more FSM here, which is the dialog. And let's go back to the, whoops, this is the dialog, which is fine. And let's go back to the trigger. Let's click here and use owner, game FSM, FSM name. I can just actually browse FSM's game objects. If you press the three dots, you can press here, and then I'm just gonna show dialog. And here I'm gonna add a global event, and I'm just gonna say a new global event, and let's call it start dialog. So let's make it start dialog. Once I go now to the other dialog FSM, I'm just going to add a global transition, custom events, and here's start dialog. There's a lot of other global events from different tutorials, so sorry about that, but let's just click here, start dialog. So once I have this set up, I can start with the dialog. Let's just shortly see what the first state actually does. If you go into the trigger and you walk here, you can see that the interact box appears and disappears. And once I am in here, I can press E, and then it's sent to the next FSM, the dialog, which starts here. And there's nothing in there at the moment, so we'll work on that. Great. So the first thing I want to do is destroy object, because I want to get rid of this press E to interact. You can also just hide it again if you want. If you want to, let's say, make it possible that you can re-talk with the person, you need to change the state a little bit. But in this instance, I just want to get rid of this object. I want to wait shortly, wait 0.5, and then I'm just gonna add a state, just finished. Right, and then here I'm gonna add a state, which is gonna be the dialog or a conversation 1. Great. And for that, of course, I will need in my UI, user interface, a new box. So what I want to do next is go to the Playmaker user interface, and I'm just going to add a UI here, and I'm going to add a image, and this image will be this text box here. And of course, it's not really very nice now. I'm just gonna make sure that's always at the upper side of the screen. And what I'm gonna do is just move it up here. And I want to make it just a little bit bigger. Something like this. Within game, you can see how it looks. Make sure to look on different aspect ratios, how it actually looks. I think somewhat like this. It's quite okay. And I also want to add a canvas group component here. And with the canvas group component, I can control the alpha of this UI. Of course, I can also do this here in this color, but in this case, the canvas group will make the whole group 0, or you can actually, all the things which are behind this, you can also, say, reduce to 0 to make it invisible. Just gonna leave it visible for now, and I'm gonna call this box to dialog. And within the dialog, I want to add 2 texts, also again a UI, and I'm gonna use the Text Mesh Pro text. You can also just use a normal text. And I want to add 1 text and another one. There we go. This one it will be the dialog text, and the other one will be press to continue text. And the one here, just gonna drag it down there, and here I will just make it press E to continue. And I want to make sure it's a little bit big, so let's perhaps make the text size 20, now 24. And let's just snap it here. And let's check in game, press E to continue. And let's make it a little bit nicer, something like this. There we go. And the dialog text, I just want to start here, which was this 24. Let's make it the same size. And let's make it bold. Now, of course, you can use within Text Mesh Pros all kind of different fonts, so make sure to use this wisely. And I just wanted to fill in here. Whoops, it's gonna drag this down, as you can see. So this will be the whole text field. If I now fill it out just as a test, well, you can put a lot of text here. Okay, and it automatically removes it. So it's just a text. Yeah, something like this. And what I would like to add as well is a little bit this extra kind of dimension. And I'm gonna just add it to the canvas. 2 more images, UI image. I'm just gonna add 1 image. And I'm just gonna drag this here. And I just want to swipe this to the top. And I'm gonna add the face of my main character. There we go. And let's call this one player. I'm just gonna duplicate it, and I'm gonna replace the player face with, let's say, that conversation partner. And I wanted to have this similar size. It looks similar. This face looks a little bit bigger because the picture is a little bit different. So I'm just gonna make it a little bit smaller. Something like this. And let's call this, or let's just call this the Emily. And this is, let's call this Dad. So they will have a conversation. And also for them, I'm gonna add a canvas group. And also here, canvas group. Right. And what I'm gonna do now for all is set it to 0. So you have now this game object. By the way, family is now 1. You can see this little face here, which is, I think, a nice addition to the conversation. I'm just going to make it all disappear now. Just a dialog, 0, and everything will disappear here. Very nice. And now I'm just going to go to the dialog, and I'm going to work on my FSM to make the text appear and disappear. So what happened now, once I press E, this little box will disappear and I will start my conversation. And to start the conversation, I'm gonna set the UI canvas group alpha, and I'm gonna specify a game object here, which is the dialogue. I'm just gonna, let's make it 0.9, make it a little bit transparent, which is a nice effect. Just gonna copy and paste this, and in this case, I'm just gonna also put Emily, as Emily will start the conversation. And I want to set the text. To set Text Mesh Pro UGI text, which is the dialog text. Whoops. So specify an object and put the dialog text here. And here I can now press or make any text I want. Hello, Dad. What are you doing? What are you doing here? And what I want to do is always I want to reset on exit, so it will go back to the original state, which is 0. And the text I don't have to do every frame, but I want to set these UI group canvases. I want to reset them. And what I want to add here as well is then a get button down. Oh no, get key down, sorry. And this is just going to be the E again. And it's just the finished. Just gonna, whoops, add here the finished. And what I can do now is copy paste it here. Conversation 2. And in conversation 2, I want to change just a picture of that there. Very nice. And I'm of course going to change the text. I am showing people on YouTube how to make a dialogue. So I'm going to copy paste the third one. And here I copied Emily already, so I have Emily back. That's good. Here's that. And here I'm just going to say, that's awesome. Have fun. So much fun to teach you guys. And then after, just going to add one more state. And the final state, this depends on you. In my case, the final state, I would like to just destroy this conversation. But of course, if you want to have the characters to repeat conversation, you just have to make a loop back to the interact dialogue. And here I'm just going to say destroy object, and this should be the self. Good. So let's see if it works. The first state works well as this box pops up and goes down. I might want to make it a little bit transparent or different. I press E, and as you can see, it will start the conversation. Let's just make this maximize on screen. Hello, Dad, what are you doing here? I'm showing the people on YouTube how to make a dialogue. That's awesome, have fun. And once I press E again, it's now gone. One thing, of course, which remains in this setup is that I can keep walking with my character. So as you can see, I press E, conversation starts, I can actually just continue to walk and play the game. And the question is if I want to do this or not. And there's one easy way to go around this, and I will show you shortly how to do this. I can just stop my character if I want to. I can just put it here on, let's say, the ground. And I'm going to do this to set a property. And I show this at the end because this is for everyone a little bit different. Because what I want to do here, actually, I will go to my player, my Emily is my player here, and I have got a player controller script, quite a big one for all different kind of movements. And I'm gonna add here an FSM, and I'm gonna do set property here. And I'm just gonna move the player controller script. You could also search it from there, but for me it was just a little bit easier. Just gonna copy this action, copy selected action, go back to dialog, and I'm gonna add it here. Paste action, set property of my player controller. And what you can do here is select all the properties which are in this controller, which is also quite a neat function of Playmaker, that I can change, let's say, these float values. And I have one, probably here is the movement speed. And now I have to be careful, of course. If I go to my player controller, my movement speed is 3.5 normally. So if I go now to this dialog here, I'm just going to set this on 0 here. And I'm just going to copy this state. I'm just going to set it back to 3.5. Whoops, 3.5. In the end, to keep moving. And also with this function, you can change, let's say, your character stats or controller stats easily by Playmaker. And let's just make sure to remove the FSM on my character, as I'm not using it here. So let's see what this actually does. And let's get into the game. And once I start now to interact, I won't be able to move my character. I can still jump though, and in this case I can also still dash, as I did not turn those off. You can also turn those off, or perhaps turn off the whole script. You will have to find a function for that. But anyhow, this pretty much does the trick to have an easy conversation system within your game. I hope it's useful for you. If you like it, please press like, and if you like my videos, make sure to subscribe. I will try to keep updates coming once a week. So see you guys next time. Cheers!